and welcome to Property Mastermind podcast with Hilary Saxton and Bob Anderson, episode 96. This week, leveraging your equity for property development, a beginner's guide. Ooh, sounds good, doesn't it? This week, we will be covering in this podcast how property owners can leverage their equity to fund property development projects. We'll explain what equity is and how it can be used as a powerful financial tool to help you achieve your property development goals. We'll also cover a range of topics relating to equity, including how to calculate your equity and the different ways to access it. Anyway, let's jump on into episode 96. Hello and welcome to Property Mastermind Podcast, episode 96. As I said, leveraging your equity for property development, a beginner's guide. And don't be fooled by beginners, because I know that everybody's going to grab a few nuggets out of this. I was just speaking to a client this morning and saying the things we love to learn are things we already know a little bit about, and we tighten up the knowledge. So this is going to be one of those episodes. Hilary Saxton and Bob Anderson. Clearly I'm Hilary Saxton because I'm the female, and this is Bob Anderson for those of you that are watching
Clearly
live.
I'm not the female.
Clearly you're not. How are you, Bob?
I'm great. Oh, yes. Good weekend.
Great weekend. Oh, well, we've had Anzac Day.
Well, we did have Anzac Day after the weekend. Yeah, that was good. And I thought, nice touch last night. You used, what were they? That was it was a Turkish meal of sorts.
I made Turkish wraps.
They're
to celebrate
on
Anzac Day. I know.
Sleeping with the enemy. Mind you, that's a long time ago. We've got some very good friends now that they're from Turkey.
I thought you were going to say we've got friends that are Turkish wraps.
Got some Turkish friends. Yeah, no, great Anzac Day, great weekend. Another long weekend coming up. There's no end to the long weekends. We're barely over Easter, and we've got Anzac Day holiday, and now a long weekend. Does anybody work anymore?
Well, not really. Well, I don't know. That's a great question, Bob. That's a great question.
Well, most of our holidays seem to be in the first part of the year. Hey, like there's a whole clump of holidays. Then we have a bit of a break for a while.
A bit of a break from it. Then we have a long stint, and it's all go for that long stint, and then we're back in. Yeah. I've already booked in some holidays though.
Oh, am I invited?
Some of them you are. Oh.
Yeah.
I've booked a trip back to New Zealand.
Yeah. Okay. I'll let you go on that one.
And I've booked another trip there as well. And I'm thinking, we need to book another trip as well.
We do. Little trip away, a resort, a cruise.
I know, you keep saying cruise. Yes.
Cruises are lazy, they're great.
Anyway, Bob, less about what we're up to, even though, the odd person might be interested. Let's talk more about leveraging your equity for property development, a beginner's guide.
Indeed, equity. When it comes to property development, the financiers don't give you 100%, do they?
No, and that's okay.
Sadly,
when it comes to equity in your property, you don't get, and that's a conversation I have so often with people. I'll say that how much money do you actually have for a property development, and they'll say, well, the question is really how much equity do you have in your property, or in how many properties you have, or whatever. And it might mean that they own a property worth 1.5 million and they have 500,000 debt. So they believe that their equity is 1 million, and it's not.
No, you can't get your hands on that million because
you own it, but you can't get your hands on it.
No, it's true. If someone was to say, how much equity do you have in your house? You'd say $1 million, which is true. But getting your hands on that money, you're not going to get $1 million because they're only going to lend you a percentage of the value. So if it's worth 1.5, let's say they might lend you 75 or 80% or 70% even.
Isn't it generally rule of thumb it's going to be 70, roughly? That's what I always think. I don't know why.
Yeah, it varies from bank to bank from time to time. It's 70 to 80 typically. And then having worked out what that number is, let's say it was 70. Now you put me on for some maths. So 70% of 1.5 I think is $1,050,000, and take off your debt of 500, it leaves you 550 that you can get your hands on. So yes, you might have $1 million equity, but you only get your hands on $550,000 worth. If the banks were lending more than 70%, maybe up to 75 or 80, well, obviously you can get your hands on a bit more, but you'll never get your hands on the million.
Bob, does that number change? Like you said, if the banks were, is that something that does change over time?
Yeah, it can. Banks can become more conservative in time, and then they'll lend at a lower LVR. And so, yeah, things like lines of credit used to be easy to get. Now they're a lot harder. Banks aren't, big fans of it. So, yeah, things change. I mean, finance is fluid. Attitudes, banks change. Yeah, it's whatever it is at the time.
Mm.
Yeah, but the important thing, as you said, is you'll only get a percentage of that actual equity because the bank's only going to lend a percentage off the value of your property.
And then I'm going to throw this wee spanner in. I'm just wondering, so somebody has that much equity in their property, so they're going to perhaps...
Try and get it out.
Yep, try and get it out. They still have to be able to service that, don't they? So you just because you have that equity available doesn't mean you can service it. So how do people get around that one, Bob?
Well,
or what are the strategies for that one? If you don't have, what if you don't have a job? What if you're retired?
Well, you won't get it.
Oh, there you go.
It's as simple as that. I mean, typically with a retail loan, serviceability is a big thing. So first of all, you can work out what you could potentially get, and that'll be based on the loan to value ratio that the banks will lend against that property. We said 70, could be 75, could even be 80. It'll depend on that. But at the end of the day, you have to service the debt because it's a retail loan, and retail loans require serviceability. And so there's plenty of people around with chunks of equity in their house that they can't get their hands on for various reasons.
And mostly would that reason be because they don't have the serviceability to cover?
Could be the serviceability, could be their
draw.
age. When you get older, you can't necessarily get 20-year loans or the like, and it's what. So it's the equity that you want to get your hands on that's in your house. You want to get that so that you can put it towards financing a development. I mean, that's really what you're trying to do. What's most of the people we do business with, that's what they want. They want to extract equity either out of their house, perhaps they've got investment properties as well, that they can extract equity out of and put it to a better use, really.
Can I just interject there with two things? First of all, because I'm going to go to the rich dad, poor dad thing. We need to give away our book. Property Millionaires Exposed this week goes to Connor Schmidt. Girl said that you're the winner this week, so every now and then I get told who it is, and this week it's you, so this isn't the post to you, by the way. So back to the podcast now, Bob.
Yep.
So the reason you would want to use your equity is because we want our money to make money.
Yeah.
And when the bank will give you back your equity, not give you back because it's still, when you can use that money that you're paying perhaps 3, 4 or 5 or 6 or 7% on, and make that money, or that money could create for you 15, 16, 17, 18%, or it could, be...
Or 50%.
Yes, exactly, 50% in a property development or whatever that is.
Yeah.
That's why we want to do it. And I think, how many people do we know? Not many, but we do know a few that is hell-bent on paying off their property.
Yeah. Like that equity, let's say your loan's 5.5%, just to pick a number. So... that's really the cost of your equity. Like for every extra dollar you put in of equity in your home, let's say, you're saving 5.5%. Like if you borrow, let's say you buy a property for $1 million, and you have to put equity in, a deposit or whatever it is, and you put in say $300,000 and you borrow $700,000. Let's say you do that, so you've got $300,000 worth of equity in there. Now, if you put in $299,000 and borrowed $701,000, you could do that. So, but all that dollar of equity cost you is an extra dollar of debt, and the percentage on that is, let's say, 5.5%. So that's really what your equity is worth. So the question is, can you do better than 5.5% on your equity? Because if you can, then you're better off maybe doing something like that to get ahead, to build wealth. So to me, that's what it's worth. It's whatever the loan interest rate is what your equity is worth.
Totally.
And
so
most people for years have been extracting equity out to go and buy another investment property.
Yes.
And they say, well, in the long run, I'll get capital growth, and they weigh it up and they say, well, I'm better off doing that with my equity than just, putting more and more equity on my loan. And
Can I just drop in
saving
right now, though?
5.5%.
How many people do I talk to a week that say, oh my goodness, I wish I didn't do that strategy and I wish I went property developing? So
Well,
many.
all the time that happens.
Yeah, because it's too slow. And nothing against investing.
Yeah.
It's just an easier road to go down. We all understand it. You just go to the bank and they do it for you. Basically,
Yeah.
they do, don't they?
Well, we love property investing, but as developers, our investments we create at raw cost. So we create a $600,000 property for $500,000, and so we'll keep it as an investment because property is a great investment. But through property development, that's one of the benefits. We get it at raw cost, not retail price. So
That's like somebody buying a property and getting an absolute bargain, which you don't get
every time you do it.
Yeah, every time. Yes.
So you do 4 townhouses that are worth $600,000 each, and getting them for $500 each. So that's equity. So as developers, we want to get our hands on equity. Why? Because when we do a development, the bank wants equity as well. It's a bit like a deposit. When we buy a house, an investment property, our own house, the bank says you have to have a deposit and we'll lend you the rest. Well, when you do a development, you have to have a deposit and they'll lend you the rest, but we don't call it a deposit. In property development, we call it equity. And that's, usually what we're trying to get our hands on to do a property development. In fact, not usually, that's what we have to do. Because banks don't lend you 100% on a development. So they want some equity. They might want 30% of costs or whatever it is, 25, 30%. Where's that going to come from?
Well, either money you've got in the bank or equity from somewhere.
It's got to come
or
from
an
somewhere.
investor.
Oh, yeah, all those places.
So I think we've just covered the why. The why you would use your equity, and the why you would use your equity because it's costing you 5%, and you can have it. The gap between that and what you can make on it is money for nothing. Which is, if you read Rich Dad Poor Dad, that's what it's about. It's about understanding how you can make you money while you sleep.
Yeah,
that's it.
And it
without working.
Yeah, and it could be an active property development like we're talking about, or it could be even an investment in a property development. I mean,
and I do both right now. Hand up, I've got both going on. So,
and even with our own developments, we pay people a return on their money.
Yes.
And they sometimes use their equity, their lines of credit or whatever it is, to make extra money.
It's like using the margin or gaining the margin. And just on that, but that was a wee plug there, Bob, was it? Was that a little advert?
A little bit, it could have been.
Could have been.
I mean, we've got a mezzanine fund where we pay people 17%. So if they can access their own equity at 5.5% and make 17%, they're creaming off 11.5% for doing nothing. And that's making your money work, like you said before, making it work better for you.
And I think that's something that I'm going to say it's not really uneducated, because educated people do, but uneducated in the realm of how your money could make money for you and using property to do it. I think it's one of those things.
Yeah.
It's something, if you don't know what you don't know.
I say like money's lazy. If you want to make money, you've got to make it work. You've got to do something to it. Just let it sit there and go to sleep. I mean, the easiest thing to do is throw some money in the Commonwealth Bank, just get on a term deposit, go back to sleep. But, between what you get that you pay tax on and then you've got inflation, you're not getting anywhere, that's for sure. Maybe even going backwards. So we typically want to extract equity out of our home or out of our investment properties and then use that equity to leverage up into, what we do anyway, leverage up into a property development where you can... the return on equity in an average property development is typically between about 50 to 70%. So that's why you want to do it. Such a much bigger return. So it might be costing you 5.5% on if you happen to have a line of credit, you're pulling money out. Or if you've got cash in the bank, you're not getting 3%, but you're making 50 or so. So that's why you do it.
That number is scary to people who are newish to
making 50%.
Yeah, because it's not. Yeah, so how do we make that less scary so people understand it? Yes.
You see, we're using gearing. We're using the bank's gearing. So if we were to do a development and just use all cash, not borrow money. Like if we were wealthy, if we did a development that cost us $1 million and we just used the $1 million cash that we have, we'd probably get a return of about 15, maybe up to 20%, because we're just using cash. But what makes such a high return is that the bank will give us 3 to 4 times what we put in. So let's just say we put in 25% and the bank lends us 75%. So that's a gearing of 3 to 1. And yes, it costs interest, but the profit that you make is way more than the cost of the interest. And that's why it can easily be 50%, can be more than that, because of the gearing. Like if it costs $1 million to do a development, but we only have to put in $250,000, the bank lends us $750. We pay some interest on the $750, but when we get our profit, we compare that to the actual capital outlay, which was $250,000, and it's because of that gearing, that basically 4 to 1 gearing, where the bank lends us 3/4 and we put in 1/4. That's what gives you the big return.
You know what that reminded me of? Somebody who spoke to us a while ago, and they invested in a property development. So this is a red flag here, because you're talking 50%. But if somebody offers you 50% return, a 50% on your money, no.
No.
So
not 50% on your money.
No, you don't. So that's, you know what I'm saying here, right?
Yeah.
And I think we need to make sure that that's clear.
The other thing, if it sounds too
good to be true, it is. So yeah, what we're talking about isn't too good to be true. This is using your own money and your development, not investing in somebody else's and getting 50% if you're putting in, 50% on your money. No.
You can't get 50% on your money by investing in someone else's development, because how are they going to make money, and how's the bank going to make money?
You know where I was going. We just want people to hear this and think, oh, they said you get 50%, and then that's actually dangerous. So that's where I was going.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, when we invite people to invest in our projects, it might be a 9% return on a first mortgage security, might be 17 on a second mortgage security, and they're standard rates. That's what the market says. But as a developer, we get a lot more. And so we should, because we're smart. We do the work, and that's what we do.
So, Bob, as far as talking more about equity.
In a development?
Yeah.
And how much do you need and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it varies a little bit. Obviously, if we're going
So if you're going to do your own development, how much equity would you need?
Yeah, so you've got to put in equity. So your money goes in first, and the bank's money, I'll call it the bank, it could be any sort of financier, it doesn't have to be a bank. Well, let's call it financier. You put in your equity first, and the financier puts theirs in next. So let's look at that pretty simple hypothetical. You're doing a development, the total costs of doing it's $1 million. They might say, look, you put in 250,000 or 300,000, 25 or 30%, whatever it is, and we'll put in the rest. You put yours in first, they put in the rest. And so in terms of how much equity you need to put in, it depends on the LVRs of the financier. And if you're getting money through a bank, well, we know they're safe, they're more conservative, and therefore they'll probably want a bit more from you. There's plenty of other good lenders out there that aren't banks, and they tend to lend a little bit more than the bank. So you put in less, they put in more. So in terms of the equity requirement, it does vary a bit. But typically, you need to put in about 25 to 30% of your costs in a property development, and the financier will put in the rest. And
costs. Let's define those.
Well, all costs. We're talking a commercial loan to do a development here. So all costs, I mean, land and legals and stamp duty. We're talking about consultants' fees, council fees, even GST and finance and construction, all the fees, total costs on a development we're talking, on a commercial development loan. And yeah, that's about the equity you've got to come up with. And hopefully you've got enough of that. You can get your hands on it. It could be equity out of properties you own. It could be cash in the bank. Maybe you've got some money on deposit. It could be a mix. You could pull some equity out of your property. You might have some money in the bank. As to where that comes from. What if you haven't got much at all? What do you do then?
If you don't have much equity, or if you
Well,
don't
if you
have...
don't have much equity in your home, you haven't got much cash, and you're dying to do a property development, it's not over.
It's never over.
It's never over.
We teach that every day.
Yeah, you just have to...
Or you don't have much because you've got other things going on. Not necessarily because you don't have any money. Maybe you've invested in something else. Maybe you've invested in other property developments and you've got excited about it and you think, oh, I want to be a property developer now. And that does happen a lot.
Yeah.
It does. And so, those people, where do they get money? They get money from investors who are using equity.
Yeah, exactly.
That's one place, anyway.
Yeah, so you have to put equity to finance it. It just happens to be somebody else's money that they're getting from equity, probably in their property or cash they've got on deposit or whatever. And that's what we always do. We do joint ventures and all sorts of structures with other people who have money.
Which means they're playing the margin. They're working with the margin and they're covering the serviceability because they realise that the return is far better.
Yeah. So they might just be loaning cash to the developer and getting an interest rate return, or they might actually come into the project, boots and all, with the developer and be part of that joint venture and be on the title and so forth. It's all different ways of investors coming into deals and helping out the developer with the equity requirement. The thing about equity is too, it doesn't just have to be cash.
Oh.
Yeah, no, I'm not talking about crypto.
What are you talking about there,
I'm not talking about
Bob?
a caravan, a boat or a car. I'm talking about real estate. So financiers value real estate highly. That's why we can borrow, let's say, 80% of what a property is worth. And using mortgage insurance, even more. And the reason we can borrow so highly is that it is considered to be a very strong form of security by financiers.
Is it the highest?
It's pretty much up there. It'd have to rank above share. I mean, there could be government bonds and things, but really, it's all down to cash and real estate in the real estate market. Not necessarily a share portfolio. So you could have an unencumbered property that you could put up instead of cash. So there will be a cash equivalent. It's a bit like we talked about at the beginning of the podcast today. Let's say you've got this $1 million project costs you $1 million, and the bank says we need you to put in 300,000. You might have a property that's worth 400,000 with no debt, and the bank says, well, it's worth 400. We'd lend maybe 75% against that.
As luck would have
So
it.
they'll lend 300,000 against that property, and guess what? You need $300,000 to do your other development. And so what they'd do, they'd take security over that unencumbered property. They'd take security over the development one that you bought, and basically finance the development 100%, because they've got two lots of security, and they're basically taking the 300,000 out of, one property and putting it in as equity in the development.
We're talking commercial finance, aren't we?
Yeah. And that's how that works. And
so
it doesn't have to be cash.
And the beauty of that is that's how a joint venture with a landowner works, because they put that in, and you do the development.
I did a joint venture once with I met him. He was the plumber drainer for a builder I used.
Of course you did.
But he was pretty well off, and he owned a commercial property that had no debt. And I ended up doing a joint venture with him, but instead of putting in cash as his contribution, he put the property up. And so the financier took a first mortgage over that property that he owned, the commercial property, took a first mortgage over the one we bought to do the development, and there's plenty of equity in there, lots of it.
Well, does that take is that like a lot of work for a financier to do that? Does Joe Average it's pretty simple, they do it every day?
It is, yeah. I mean, all they have to do is make sure they've got enough security to work within their loan-to-value ratios.
Yeah.
So they'll value the property you're buying, they'll value the property that you're putting up as security, they'll get that valued, and they'll lend a percentage against, both. And so in your development, you're not putting cash in. So in effect, they're lending you 100% of the costs. They're lending you the $1 million you need without... because the extra security they got is the other property. And so your interest is a bit higher because it's not cash equity. They're lending you 100% of the total development cost.
And because it's commercial, the interest is capitalised anyway. So you're not actually having to service that debt.
No,
There's no serviceability on that. That is the land.
Yeah, the interest is capitalised. So you haven't got to find the interest every month out of your back pocket. It'll be written into the loan. The interest component will be part of the loan. The bank actually lends you the money to pay them the interest every month, which is why I love capitalised interest.
Yeah.
It's the eighth wonder of the world, perhaps the ninth wonder. I think the eighth wonder, as Einstein said, was compound interest. So it might be the ninth wonder of the world would be capitalised interest on a commercial loan.
Isn't it funny? Wonder 8 and 9 are interest related.
Money related interest,
well,
it is
go.
compound effect. So,
you know what? Interesting. Had a phone call today from a mentoring student who just had a handshake with a man to do a joint venture with a landowner.
Oh yeah,
it's a massive deal. It's huge, 2,000 square metres. It's commercial development. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But that just came...
Many millions of dollars worth.
It is many millions. And that just came from him being tenacious and just approaching, approaching, this land looks like it could do that, find the owner of the land, say, hey, we could do a joint venture here and this is it's happening. We haven't signed papers, but we've shaken hands. And we're not, the student has. Yeah. And how cool is that?
Yeah.
It just goes to show that's out there. And this guy wants to do it, doesn't know how, owns the land outright and sees the potential. Somebody gave him an opportunity.
Yeah. But guess who taught the guy that gave him the opportunity?
You did, Bob.
We did.
Oh,
girl.
we did.
Yes.
Yes.
So
exactly.
Otherwise, he'd be doing whatever he used to do.
Exactly.
So now he's jumped into a big deal. Good on him. I love that.
It's pretty spectacular. But that's the equity from that land is being put up as the security.
So as you say, joint venture with the landowner. It's a little bit different from technical joint venture, but all that equity. Think of all the equity that's in that land, in that development site, and it's got an approval too, so it's even worth more that you can get your hands on to fund the whole project. And that project can be developed in stages, so you haven't got to develop the whole thing in one hit. You can develop it in stages, which is great because no cash will need to go into that deal.
How good's that?
No cash at all. So our student, whom we've taught how to do these things, won't put in 5 cents, but will make millions.
Absolute millions. How good's that? Bob, well done. You do amazing work.
You've probably spent more time with him than I have, but anyway.
I do spend a lot of time with our mentoring students.
I'll take my 50% of the
You do the education.
And you do the other 50%.
Okay, so have we covered enough? Have we explained...
I hope we've explained it.
How to calculate it, we've done that one.
Yes.
And the different ways to access it, we've done that.
Yeah. Cash, we talked about cash, we talked about properties, we talked about investors.
Self-managed super funds, redraws?
Well, it's not so much a self-managed super fund in your own project.
No.
You can use your self-managed super fund to invest in other people's
but not relatives either. So.
No, but not long as it's arm's length. Yeah. So lots of avenues. Like I suppose the bottom line is, if you've got equity sitting in a property and get your hands on it, you can make it work a lot better. You can get the thing out there working.
Get your money making money.
And once if you can access that, then the best way is a property development. And you have to have equity for property development. But as we talked about, it could be your equity yourself that you've got out of other properties. It could be funds you've gotten from an investor. It could be unencumbered property owned by you or somebody else. I mean, at the end of the day, there's plenty of money out there looking for a good home.
And if people are smart enough to realise that their equity, their money, can be making more money, well, then the other people need to be chatting to, or that's the person you need to become.
Yep.
So, Bob, before we wrap up,
yep,
I've just got to let everybody know about our online workshop coming up.
Oh, that's coming up.
And that's in May, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
3 days that'll change your life.
3 days.
As it did with our friend we just talked about.
Yes. The link will be below, so make sure you check that out. But it's May 26, 27, 28, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Now, if you buy a ticket to our online workshop, you also get a ticket to the November one. And if you can't make, which is November,
live in person,
which is live in person in the Gold Coast, 345, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You also get to bring so you get 2 workshops for the price of one. And no, but wait, there's more. You also get, if you buy it as part of our bundle, you get to bring a friend for free, another 3,495.
Ooh.
That's 7. So you save $7,000. But you also, if you buy the bundle, get our online course.
The friend is really like a business partner or a life partner.
Yeah, a business partner or a life partner. And the reason for that is you want to have your people around you that, support you doing this, or your business partner or whoever that is. So
online workshop, live in-person workshop and everything that goes with that, which is heaps of fun and networking, going out at night and doing everything, and bring a friend for free.
And learning from you, Bob. We have to say there are
you
plenty
throw
of
that in,
educators.
I'll throw that
there
in.
are plenty of educators out there, but you are at the top, and why would you not learn from the best? You are phenomenal, and you're a fantastic teacher. So definitely worth coming along to that. But if you're interested, there will be links below, and we would love for you to join us. We have so many people talking to us saying, oh my gosh, why didn't we find you earlier? So this is your opportunity. We can't wait to hear from you.
Yeah.
And hopefully you found some use for your equity.
Yep. Get it to work. It's lazy. Put the whip on it.
Put the whip on your energy, on your equity. All right, that is the end of episode 96. We will look forward to chatting to you next week on episode 97.
Whoa.
Bye.
See you then.